Today's story is about a powerful and heartbreaking film that shows us that sometimes the real pain begins after the war ends. The movie is called Land of Mine, and it's based on real-life events that took place in Denmark shortly after World War II. Germany had surrendered. Denmark was finally free. But the war had left behind a hidden threat: millions of deadly landmines buried deep beneath Denmark's western beaches by retreating German soldiers. These mines needed to be removed to make the land safe again. But who was chosen for this dangerous job? That's where the story takes a dark and tragic turn. Instead of trained soldiers, German teenage POWs, some just 13 or 14 years old, were forced to crawl across beaches to find and defuse the very mines their army had planted. They were scared, underfed, and untrained children, treated like disposable tools by their captors. The film opens with a chilling scene. Young boys crawling slowly across a beach with metal rods, gently poking the sand in search of buried explosives. One boy manages to disarm a mine carefully, but just moments later, another boy attempts the same and triggers an explosion. The blast tears off both of his arms. Screams echo. The camera doesn't flinch. And that's when we realize this war may be over, but the horror has just begun. These boys were prisoners, rounded up by Danish forces after the war. Their punishment? Risking death every day to remove mines that could kill anyone who stepped in the wrong spot. The Danish government gave them no choice. Soon, they were placed under the brutal watch of Sergeant Carl Rasmussen, a cold and bitter man whose hatred for the Nazis had hardened him. To Carl, these boys weren't victims. They were reminders of the enemy, and he treated them with cruel indifference. He gathered the boys and pointed to the coastline, saying, "There are 45,000 mines here. Your soldiers buried them. Now you'll clean up their mess." Each boy was ordered to find and defuse 6 mines per hour. If they worked fast and didn't die, Carl said they might be sent home in 3 months. So they began. Crawling through sand, sweating in fear, carefully twisting open mine caps and removing fuses. One boy named Turnus did it smoothly. Others weren't as lucky. A single misstep could end a life in a second. After the day's work, the boys filled bags with grass to create soft beds, trying to find some comfort in a place that offered none. At night, they talked about their families, about home, about hope. But deep down, many feared they'd never leave alive. As days passed, their conditions worsened. They weren't given enough food. Carl locked them in a wooden shed each night, nailing the door shut. One night, a starving boy named Helmut escaped, searching for food. By morning, another boy, Ernst, was burning with fever, but was still forced to work. Then Wilhelm, another teen, collapsed and vomited. When Schumann rushed to help, a mine exploded, blowing off Wilhelm's arms. Wilhelm cried out, "I want to go home!" But no one helped, not the nearby farmer who shut her door in Ernst's face. Not Carl at first, but even he couldn't ignore the screams for long. He finally came out, gave Wilhelm a shot to numb the pain, and carried him to a hospital himself. The situation grew worse. The boys began falling sick. Carl discovered they had eaten spoiled grain, taken in desperation from a local farm. When he confronted the farmer, she smiled cruelly, happy that German boys were suffering. Carl made the boys drink seawater to purge the sickness. He washed them himself. He began to feel guilt, but it was too late. At the hospital, Wilhelm died. That night, Carl did something unthinkable. He stole bread from the military base and gave it to the children. He even lied, telling them Wilhelm was improving, just to give them hope. From that moment on, something changed in Carl. The boys were no longer just prisoners. They were kids, scared, alone, human. Still, the mine clearing continued. Only now the quota rose to 8 mines an hour. The boys accepted this punishment in silence, paying for a war they hadn't started. One night, drunken Danish soldiers broke in and threatened the boys. When they tried to defend themselves, guns were drawn. Carl intervened, saying, "If these kids die, who'll clear your damn mines?" The soldiers backed off. Then, tragedy struck again. Skam discovered a double mine, designed to deceive. He warned the others, but one boy, Werner, excited by success, ignored it. The mine exploded. Werner died. His brother Ernst was crushed. Carl could do nothing. Ernst, now hollow with grief, kept whispering that he wanted his brother back. Carl gave him sleeping pills to ease the pain. He looked at the boy and finally saw him for what he was. Not an enemy, but a child broken by war. The next day, Carl allowed the boys to rest. They played football by the beach. For a moment, they smiled. But the relief didn't last. Another explosion killed Carl's dog, even though the area was cleared. Carl, angry and suspicious, punished a boy by forcing him to bark like a dog. He slapped another and sent them to recheck the field. Soon after, a woman came crying. Her daughter had wandered into a minefield. Without hesitation, the boys ran to help. Ernst picked up the girl and handed her to Skam, then walked away, smiling, broken, done. A mine exploded beneath him. Skam collapsed. Carl promised him they'd all go home soon. 3 months passed. The beach was clear. The boys loaded the final mines into a truck, laughing for the first time in ages. But as if fate refused to let them go, another explosion killed 2 more boys. The surviving 4 sat in silence, faces blank, dreams gone. Then came the final blow. Instead of going home, they were ordered to a new minefield, this one with 72,000 mines. Carl begged his superiors to let them go. They refused, but Carl made a decision. He forged an official order and helped the boys escape. As they sat in the truck, unsure of where they were going, Carl pulled back the curtain. They were at the border. He had kept his promise. As a soldier, he disobeyed orders. But as a human, he finally did what was right.